Do you ever think what you should be eating to expedite your healing process? Or what even to eat on a regular basis to support bone health as you actively age? I'm going to share with you a very few statistic numbers that are really shocking to me and Detrick, who is here today with me and will share essential information in a minute. Did you know that 1 in 2 women and 1 in 3 men have low bone mass? And additionally, with age, our bones get more brittle. And that probably is contributing factor to the shocking stats that we found out through our research that every year in US, 5 to 10% of fractures do not fully heal, which is troubling because that just sets you up for reoccurring injury. And Resync, as always, is here to help you live a healthier life. We want you to stay as active as you want, keep on doing things you love with the people you truly love. And that's why today we're going to share with you essential information that will help you expedite recovery of any bone fracture. And when Detrick and I talk about evidence-based nutrition for bone healing, it's not just providing you with any nutrients that needs to be taken specifically during the first 4 weeks of the healing process, but what is crucial to us is the phases that you need to pay attention to during the healing process. Because it's one thing to know what bone is made of, the water, the proteins, and the minerals, but what and when to take is equally important. And Detrick is going to take you through the 3 stages that determine successful healing process. Detrick, please take us through the inflammation, resolution, and the remodeling process that really matters when we talk about bone healing.
Absolutely. Thanks for the intro. I think this is one of the most important topics when it comes to bone health and bone healing, and it just doesn't get discussed. Your doctor might say, go out and eat enough calories, get your servings of vegetables, and that might be the limit of the nutrition education we get. But when Barbara and I dived into the research literature, looking at primarily high quality human clinical data, we see very clearly that specific nutrients can support the healing activities depending on which stage of the healing process a person is in. So if you're interested in how you can eat or supplement in ways that supports or detracts from your healing, we want to cover what to do, and we want to cover what not to do, at least at a high level here. For people who want to dive deep into the details, we have a series of courses on connective tissue nutrition, but just here we want to have a casual conversation on this process that we think just needs to get out there. People need to know more about it. So we're going to cover how you can avoid slowing down your healing time, how you can promote speeding it up, and covering how to understand supporting each stage physically and nutritionally. And like I said, the list of things not to do, the most important things not to do depending on each stage. And I'll tell you, a lot of people, a lot of clinicians get this wrong just because they don't have access to the right research and the right information. So let's dive right on in. Stages of healing: inflammation, resolution, and remodeling. This is the natural arc of the healing process. I like to use an analogy. If you had a house and you experienced a natural disaster, you've got to rebuild in some way. So the first step to repairing this house is clearing out the broken materials, all of the junk, all of the clutter. Just as if you broke a bone, your cells have to go into that space and clear out all of the debris, all of the broken material. That's your inflammation stage. Next in the step, you've got to resolve things. In the house analogy, this would be the equivalent of building scaffolds in order to make sure that the structure gets put back on its on the best foundation. So just like you were building a house, if you're rebuilding broken bones, that resolution process involves forming a callus and forming the scaffold that later bone tissue is deposited into. And that's that final stage. The remodeling stage is just like the terminology you'd use in a house. If you've cleared out all the debris, you've erected a scaffold in order to rebuild the structure, the remodeling takes place, and that's when the real heavy lifting happens, in where you put down the panels, you put down the floors, and you get back to the house pre-disaster. So when it comes to bones, the most disastrous thing that can happen is a break. And we see that this is very common with people with low bone mineral density, and especially older people, who aren't consuming as many calories, they're not consuming as many nutrients. This whole process has to be, the nutritional support for this process really has to be emphasized. So going into a little bit more granular detail, let's talk about the inflammation stage first. So as I said, this is the stage where your immune cells are getting into that broken bone space. They're tearing down the broken tissue and halting any further damage. This is a really important process, this inflammatory component. It lasts up to a week, depending on the size of the break. It might only be a single day for a small, minor hairline fracture, something like that. Knowing that this is a highly inflammatory state, the number one thing to not do in this stage is to add high dose antioxidants and over-the-counters that blunt the antioxidant response. Now, what I'm speaking specifically here are the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These NSAIDs or painkillers, they block pain by blocking the specific inflammatory pathway that your bones and any inflamed tissue that's going through this process needs to go through in order to proceed through the healing process. Without tearing down the broken debris in a damaged house, you can't erect a scaffold. You can't safely put anything up into that house. You just have to follow the process step at a time. So we dive deeply into the research literature and the mechanism of this in our course, but just keep in mind this key takeaway: the idea of getting back to your performance by taking painkillers so that you can forget about the pain that's trying to tell you specifically, you need to stop loading this tissue. That process has to be respected. That inflammation has to proceed. There's something to be said. People need pain relief, and they should talk to their doctors about alternate non-NSAID options. But the research is mounting, and it's quite clear that across tissues, these painkillers can delay the healing process. So on the flip side, not all is lost. There's a lot of things you can do during this inflammatory stage. So first, you have to seek medical attention, getting that bone immobilized, getting it set right. That's the most important thing. But when it comes to nutrition, you've got to be able to support that inflammatory catabolic process. If you're tearing out the broken pieces, this is the very definition of catabolism, of breaking down. And that requires calories, that requires specific nutrients, and your immune system has to be supported through this process, because it's the immune system carrying out that process of breaking it down. So going into the next state, resolution is, it can be often confused with anti-inflammatory, just because the first stage is pro-inflammatory, but really more accurately, the resolution state is pro-resolving. There are a mix of anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory processes that, once again, they have to go on in order for the bone to heal correctly. You point out accurately, 5 to 10% of fractures in the United States do not heal completely. And this is a process that can take more than 6 months. It can take more than a year, especially for an older adult who isn't getting the adequate nutrition. The more you delay that process, the less likely that bone is going to be healed. So supporting the resolving of the inflammation is, like I said, it's like building the scaffold on which new tissue is going to be laid down. This is the process where a blood clot that halted all of those processes is removed, and then new blood vessels form. That damaged bone matrix continues to be removed, and ultimately the end goal of the resolution process is the formation of a callus. Just like you would see a callus on a surface wound that you might have, turns into a scar. In your bone, you have a similar callus. And the really notable thing nutritionally here is that callus starts out as cartilage. So bone, when it's going through this healing process, proceeds through different connective tissues. It starts out on your long bones as cartilage, which provides the collagen matrix that later during the remodeling process, the hard minerals are infused inside that cartilage in order to harden it. This helps to reiterate the spongy, the elasticity of bone. We think of these as like really hard tissues, and in our body, relatively speaking, they are, but bones have to be able to absorb an impact. And so this resolution process is key to forming the base structure that is able to absorb that impact. That cartilage callus is critical for holding on to water and holding on to minerals. So what not to do in this stage? I would say one of the most important things is probably, and one of the most relevant things is avoiding excessive sugar, avoiding refined carbohydrates, and keeping blood sugar in check. I mean, a practical amount of glucose, of carbohydrates, is necessary. That inflammatory state needs specific types of calories, including protein, including fat, including carbohydrates. So I'm not trying to say to avoid all carbohydrates entirely, but to make sure that those carbohydrates are from healthy sources, from vegetables, from your whole grains, your seeds, your nuts and legumes. Because in the end, if you're supporting your nutrition calorically with sugar, there's so few nutrients in there, and the sugar has such a high risk for raising blood glucose and dysregulating this process that it basically forces you to start off on the wrong foot. If your resolution forms this cartilage, which is key to the structure and function of your bone, the excessive sugar helps to stiffen that cartilage in a way that's, it's just not good. We were talking about the elasticity necessary for your bones to take an impact. If your blood sugar is dysregulated, or you're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates during the resolution process, it forces these cartilage tissues to stiffen up. And we're already stiff enough as we age. We don't want to make it all the worse by not supporting our healing nutritionally here. Now, when it comes to the important things to do, this is when, supporting the unique building blocks of that environment. The cartilage callus, the collagen callus, is made of collagen protein, and we have very clear evidence that supporting your healing process nutritionally with the collagen building blocks is an evidence-based way to help accelerate and promote that healing process in the resolution phase. Now, in the final stage, remodeling, this is something that can start about 18 days, maybe 3 weeks in, and it can continue on for months and months and months. If you've got a large bone fracture, it may take 6 months to fully heal. And so this suggests that through that healing process, it's vitally important to make sure that you're getting a really nutrient-dense diet that's providing all of the nutrients that your body needs to make that bone, stiffen that bone in a way that is intended by the calcium and the phosphorus that go into what makes the bone stiffer, to additional collagen for supporting continued building of that scaffold. When it comes to the hard part of that bone, 90% of it is collagen, and only a little bit of that collagen is put down in the resolution phase where you're building that scaffold. After that scaffold built, you've still got to be adding in all of these nutrients and all of these building blocks to make sure that that bone heals completely. Now, I've gone through this process of inflammation, resolution, remodeling. We think it's important for people to understand that your healing has to go through this. And I just want our audience not get lost in the weeds here, knowing that there are specific nutrition that you can apply to each stage that we cover in our Nutrition for Connective Tissue course. We've covered some of the high level, most important things here. And if you want to dive in, you want to learn about the research-based nutrition prescription that you or your healthcare provider could consider, we encourage you to head over to the website and learn more, but more of the practical implementation side of things. So I'm curious, Barbara, what does that bring up for you, your clients? Do you think that people are thinking about these 3 different stages, or are they just trying to get enough protein and just get back to working out and feeling their best?
Yeah, I will first, before I fully answer your question, which is a very good question, I appreciate you asking, what nutrients specifically needs to go to each of the phases Detrick just described, the inflammation phase, 1 to 5, 1 to 7 days, right? The resolution and the remodeling. What nutrients need to be consumed in each of the stages? It's exactly at 26th minute of our online class that we did on the remodeling of your heart skeleton, your bone. So I just want to put it out there before I answer your question, Detrick. And when it comes to, my clients as a CEO right now of a company, I don't see people one-on-one as I used to every day work with professional athletes. And even on that high level, there is not only misunderstanding, it's a one thing to misunderstand information you have. There's complete lack of the information, like believing that you just need to put it to a cast, right? Let it heal 6 to 8 weeks. But we know that at this point in 2022, we're so much more educated than we were, even 10 years ago or a decade, what nutritionally we can do. And I've shared this when I was working with NFL team with the registered dietitian at that time, that it's very valuable to do some of the webinars on the subject. Nonetheless, we never got to do because she didn't have the time to do the extra research and spend on it, just like you and I did. And it took a very long time. For a period of 6 months, we did nothing else but really a research of different layers of our body, right? And you particularly with your another colleague. Now, when it comes to healing the bones, I always said to athletes, besides nutrition, movement is essential actually, because movement hydrates the tissues. Different loading patterns provide hydration of the fascia, and fascia has a different layers, and it's directly, surrounding the bone, the cartilage, the tendons, ligaments, and so forth. So avoiding movement is actually the worst thing we can do. I also remember a situation from 2011 when dear colleague of mine, Ray Crowley, put a polo player, he told me actually this story back in the day, through 3 weeks of hyperbaric chamber twice a day for 3 weeks. So technically he got like 40 dives into, he was back on the horse 3 weeks. I mean, there is the difference, doing things right immediately, right? Versus waiting or prolonging or even starting the entire process on the wrong foot, as you said. So it was really interesting to hear that story from his perspective, how oxygenation is essential. And when you think oxygenation and nutrition, you address their key nutrients, and we dive deeply into our class on it. But briefly, there are certain vitamins and the natural nitrates from vegetables that we have that kind of serve the role as the oxygenating, assistant per se, for the purpose of this video, that really helps delivering the nutrients, helps the oxygenation to get to the areas of need to heal the bone or whatever layer we talk about where the injury is present.
Yeah, so I mean, you hit on the point of oxygenation, which I mean, I just want to drill this in a little bit more. If we measure nitric oxide levels, which is what helps oxygenate your tissues, helps your blood vessels open up and lets your tissues, your muscles, your bones receive the nutrients that they need to recover, that oxygenation we see declines over age. It doesn't matter if you don't have any conditions, even though cardiovascular disease and other heart conditions can increase the risk. Doesn't matter. The older you get, the lower that oxygenation goes, which just goes to show that you've got to stay on top of the nutrition that supports the oxygenation. Those green leafy vegetables that are full of nitrates and full of other minerals, other nutrients. Ultimately, they'll help to raise those oxygenation levels and allow the blood vessels to provide the bones the nutrients they need in order to heal completely and quickly.
So besides nutrition, movement and of course emotional health plays such a big role as well in how we heal. Before we got on the video, I shared with you I had just personal incident where someone who was taking my blood was going through so much of emotional pain due to a loss she had, and how that impacted her internally, how it caused diseases. I'm not saying that emotional pain is going to cause immediately bone fracture, but what I am saying, it's going to weaken your nervous, your immune, and your connective tissue system. And that's how then that contributes to additional injuries. So absolutely, if this was helpful to you guys, and Detrick and I can have a common and kind and genuine conversation any time of the day about things of this nature, diving a little bit deeper into, of course, the nutritional key needs. But if you do want that aspect, the nutrition, we're not speaking about movement here, we're not speaking about emotional health, directly nutrition for your connective tissue health, specifically the deepest layer, bone, and how to heal from a bone fracture, I absolutely invite you to go to Resync Products website and check the full course. Also, if you are someone in a need who is looking for something to recover better and to support bone process healing, we also have a supplement that are NSF Sport Certified, that a lot of professional athletes, Olympic athletes take. A lot of functional medicine doctors provide those supplements to their patients because they trust the source, they trust the science, they trust the ingredients we put together. And also, what else? We have a really great recipes for you in that course as well. A few really samples of them is like salmon tofu salad. We've created Resync your joint salad. There is another one, parfait, that we've made that is really layered with different things to almost like every layer goes into different layers of your body and supporting your bone health. So really take your knowledge and your healing process to another level with what we offer to you at Resync site. So again, check it out at your convenience, only if this was helpful to you and you would like to really deepen your knowledge or help somebody else to do that. With that being said, have a, of course, day full of joy and energy, as we always say. And Detrick, I want to, as always, thank you for your attention and your time here. And of course, we are here to serve you guys. So if you have any questions to what we just shared with you, please post a comment and we'll make sure to get back to them. And for now, thank you.